Good day, friends. Welcome to yet another OBEJournal 2018. I think it's number 18, but I might have to double check on that. And been a while since I've done one of these. One tends to get caught up in the either the rhythms of daily life or the the rhythms of sleep. Just like anyone else, I'm not that much different from anyone else. Surprising as that may seem. And I'm glad to be back. One of the issues that can arise with out-of-body travel, lucid dreaming, consciousness projection, whatever modality you choose to use or find yourself comfortable with. After the initial excitement of being able to do it and feel that you're doing it consciously with some sense of purpose and direction, another issue that can arise is the feeling that the other world in all its glory is so much more beautiful and fulfilling and joyous, if you like, if not just pleasurable, that this world seems a grim, sad, dark, tragic place with pain and misery as its two main components. And one is not just tempted to leave permanently, but one is tempted to go to the better place. And this is quite different from the depression of a suicide. From what I can gather from the testimonies of failed suicides and the channelings of the more successful ones, we can use those terms, is they often make their move, their desperate move, under a cloud of, depression. Well, not just depression, but ignorance. They don't really know what's going on the other side. Generally, they haven't a clue. And quite often, they feel that there's nothing going on, that they're going to be extinguished, and all their anguish is going to be ended because there will be no more. And of course, they're wrong. They all find that out in one way or another. But the traveler operates from a completely different premise. I'm not saying depression couldn't enter in and can enter in because of a sense of frustration that you can't spread the joy as much as you would like. There are millions who are obsessed with the pain and suffering and tragedy of this world. There are millions who are locked in belief systems that keep them very much in the three-dimensional world. And as much as you might want to liberate them into the joys of eternity and the spirit world, or re-release them as they've all been born into this world from that world, you cannot do so. They do not wish to be moved. They wish to stay in their materialism and accumulate the various emblems of success and fulfillment, or they wish to stay within their faith and accumulate merit from the practice of their faith, which of course is not entirely a bad thing at all, in that the practice of faith often leads to great acts of kindness, compassion, good works of all kinds, which can and do benefit society on many levels. So to give it its full due, they are locked into a belief system, and they may have been for many lives. And the joy and liberation that you may feel, or that the out-of-body traveler may feel and wish to communicate, sometimes has to stay locked into the life of the out-of-body traveler. And of course, we have social media and Facebook groups and all sorts of things that can share. And of course, these are great benefits to experiencers, no question. And one would hope that they will continue. And I can't see any reason why not, at least in countries where there is a semblance of freedom, individual freedom. We know of several countries where there is not. But this general sense of being in a vanguard of explorers, of joyful, excited explorers, is, I think, thrilling at first. Then after a number of years, when you're still participating in this world and having the same sense of, I wouldn't call it despair, but because despair is for the idealist that thinks their activities can change the world for the better. And while their activities can, it's on such a small scale that the tiny increments of seeming progress are weighted down by the greater portions of ongoing cruelty and tragedy that they see around them. So it's not despair as much as frustration, I think. You have to be satisfied with your own travels and your own sharings with other travelers. And that may be a small number. As we explore the eternal unfoldings of spirits that we were born from and will return and come back from again, such is the process of rebirth and the almost endless lessons that are to learn. We can be wearied by just the actual differences. This is a heavy world that we live in. There are, if not serious illnesses to experience, that are just the general annoyances and aches and pains of daily life, which of course are gone when you're out of body. And that can lead to a lot of frustration, this lack of desire to return. And, every morning, return. And try to be sanguine and cheerful to one's fellow man. When the more beautiful, the more wonderful world is there. And you well know it. So there is a balance to be achieved. A balance between one's excitement in exploring and one's ability to serve others while exploring. It's not a requirement, but it certainly gives a greater sense of satisfaction and purpose. And we've talked about retrieval work, moving around the lower astral, seeing what you can do with the narrow-minded and prejudiced and angry people that you will find there. And working with earthbound spirits, earthbound ghosts, trying to help them see the error of their ways, help them to a greater life, a greater, more enjoyable life. There is much to do that can be of service. And that, I believe, helps this sense of frustration that I'm talking about. One has to come to terms. Now, in discussing this, I realize this coming to terms, where the out-of-body traveler has to calm their excitement, make it, smooth it out so that it fits into the rest of their life. Here is not entirely different from, let's say, a person who enters politics or bureaucracy, believing that they can help make the world a slightly better place. And often by, I would say, middle age, they would be feeling a sense of hopelessness, that things, if it's just one problem after another, and one international incident after another, one civil war after another, one tragedy after another, and their efforts are, by and large, hopeless. And they have to come to terms with that. And I can see them doing it, trying it, doing it. And there are other similarities around. The out-of-body traveler is not in a class of one, although often it seems like it. I agree. When we emerge from our physical bodies, our sleeping physical bodies, into the light of eternity, and play with our form, play with our notions, play with our innate creativity, we are exhilarated beyond measure. We are joyful beings, constantly playing and exploring. And I would say, emphasize the playing. Sometimes it seems to me that it is just that, playing. Playing with energy, playing with light, playing with belief systems, showing that all can be transcended one way or another. Some channeled material will emphasize the art of play in seemingly greater enterprises, such as the creation of a planet or a galaxy. I can think of several channel books that make that point. So one can come to an understanding of life as play, although it sure doesn't seem like it when you're on the physical plane. But when out of body, it can be seen as much, much more playful. And you can look at it as the game of life, especially when you've at least touched on, when out of body, some or many of your past lives, past incarnations. You can see that you were playing. The you that was then, was a different you than is now, was playing with certain limitations, certain definitions, certain energies to see what could be accomplished. And sometimes not much. As we progress in our, I wouldn't say control, but competition with the other energies of the physical plane, the power groups, the weather, the animals, the bacteria, the plagues. As we set ourselves against those energies, we would often feel that we had lost. That, dying young from a certain disease, dying in a pointless war because of duties to king and country, dying of overwork because the work was too intense, too dull, too oppressive. It took as many incarnations to surf the challenges of the physical plane rather than drown in them. So again, many lives where a sense of defeat is predominant. And we would come back to spirit and get recharged before another adventure on the physical plane. And as I'm sure some of you are thinking right now, that out-of-body travel at night while asleep, that is a recharging. That even those scientists who will tell us what happens when we sleep will use the phrase recharging. And they're not thinking of out-of-body travel at all. They're not thinking of consciousness expansion. They're thinking about what happens to the body while you are resting. And that sense of recharging for the next day, the next series of challenges, is a metaphor that is often used. What, of course, they don't know is the spirit is recharged by being able to play out of body and absorb the astral vibrations. Because in the astral body, one is floating in the sea of astral vibrations. And as we move up through the levels, similar things happen on those levels. Mental vibrations, causal vibrations, etc., etc. So that really is the purpose of this talk. I just wish to bring up this challenge that I'm sure some of you either are facing or will be facing, and that I have faced myself. A calming of the excitement that is born of the traveling is advised, because the world itself, the planet itself, in its entirety, is not going to share in that out-of-body excitement. Those who do it unconsciously, and there are many, will not remember either enough or even anything of their out-of-body experiences while asleep to get that sense of liberation and excitement from the traveling. They might feel refreshed from a good night's sleep, and they might discuss with their partners some wild and crazy dream that they had, as I've discussed here recently. And getting into that whole notion of that whole examination of the dream and how much of it is an accurate representation of what happened when you were out of body, and how much of it is brain activity going over what happened the day before, anticipating what might happen the next day, that sort of a thing. There's quite a melange, quite a blend there. And that's another talk altogether. But there are many who, in their dreams, and if they discuss their dreams or think about their dreams, will get intimations of the wild and crazy stuff that can happen when you're asleep and out of body. Wild and crazy stuff that transcends limitations in many ways, and challenges them to bring it into their daily lives in some way or other and make sense of it. And certainly dream analysis, people that read dream analysis books to try and make sense of what's going on, that can often be the first step to exploring the imaginative out-of-body realms. A cautious first step. When I'm conducting classes, talks, if I say, well, who had a flying dream last night, several people will put up their hands. If they hadn't had one last night, they might have had one 2 nights ago. And if we take some time to explore the dreams, we can reach a stage in the discussion where it is understood by everyone in the room that such dreams are representative of out-of-body travels, regardless of how little they may actually remember, little snippets. I've noticed that on several occasions. And certainly if you have those experiences and you're watching these videos hoping to extend your understanding, I would encourage you to explore the little snippets of flying dreams or strange occurrences in your dreams that are obviously not based in your earth life, that are something completely other. I would encourage you to explore those, even if they're just little flashes and little snippets, because in exploring them you will remember more, and that remembering will expand into some level of understanding and will increase your dream recall farther on down the line, whether that line is days or weeks or months. And certainly, as we go through this discussion, if those of you who are new to this series, there's lots of ground covered in the OBEJournal 2017 that preceded this one. There are many detailed accounts of out-of-body travels that I experienced. Many spirit contacts with the famous dead, extended, detailed contacts. One with Salvador Dali, as I recall. One with Lauren Harris, Canadian artist. One with a visit to an astral plane monastery, where sexual activity is continued. Sexual activity between the young and the old. That would be frowned upon here. An interaction with a deceased leader of the ISIS brand. Interaction with the spirit of Judah Krishnamurti, spiritual teacher of the 20th century. Many out-of-body experiences are described and discussed in detail in that 2017 series. And I just wanted to remind you all of that. If you may have discovered this new series and feel that that's enough to be going on with, which it is, there's lots in the 2017 series to be explored and experienced. I haven't done quite as much of that type of exploration in 2018, but that doesn't mean I won't. One tends to drift from episode to episode and explore what comes into one's consciousness at the moment. And this discussion of cooling your jets in order to balance out one's life, one's incarnation with, the challenges of the physical plane and the joys of the astral plane. Because out-of-body travel does liberate the spirits, no question. But it doesn't necessarily transform your physical plane life. It helps give you a deeper perspective on your physical plane life, which that gaining of that perspective may elevate your life in some manner. But the challenges of the physical plane and career, relationships, society, those challenges don't disappear. You can still be weighted down by those and have marvelous, exciting adventures at night. It's all quite possible, and it's all quite doable. But I would just remind you that a balance should be aimed for and should be tried out. It's that, what's that old metaphor about when you have your head in the clouds, it's good to have your feet on the ground? Something like that. I repeatedly see, just as a little afterword to this discussion, we're almost up of time, but I've been seeing, as one does, in interviews and in articles in our media, people who aren't necessarily having a spiritual conversation will still talk about their encountering with the energy that they'll call God, their notions of what God allows or doesn't allow, in their lives, and why God does this, doesn't do that. And I see it a lot. I've seen it a lot recently, and I always wants me to, say something. And it's not necessarily that much different from what I've said before. But I think it's a grave metaphysical error to think that God causes things to happen or prevents other things from happening. To me, the sense of divinity that one perceives in the operation of a planet or a universe, that sense of endless creativity, endless production of form and matter, is not controlled by an intelligence that allows some things and disallows others. All is permitted. There are no models to energy. There are no ethics. Look at the natural world. Do you see any ethics in storms, tornadoes, fires, floods? Like the torrential floods after the storms in northern Italy that destroyed entire forests. I just saw that one yesterday. Show me some ethics there. It's just the joy of destruction, followed almost inevitably by the joy of creation, as new life springs into expression. Whether, some of it on its own and some of it aided by man. But I would love to encourage people to expand their understanding of God and not think of it as a single-minded divinity that is laying down the law. There is no law to lay down. There is just life and more life. Some of that life seems to be creative and some of it seems to be destructive. And if you wish to go on defining things that way, then more power to you. But I would suggest that you move beyond that creative, destructive cycle and see it all as eternal expression. I'm thinking of various psychics and clairvoyants who talk of their experiences of seeing and communicating with the spirits of nature. And they will talk about the spirits of fire and the salamanders who are whooping it up in the middle of a fire. They are totally identified with the energy of a fire, and they participate in it. And they don't see that activity as destructive. They're just following their life path, just as fairies are, as they assist plants and vegetables and flowers to grow. All these creatures are caught up in the cycles of creation and destruction. In giving their energy to certain sections of the cycle, just as we do. We give our energies to the cycles of creation and destruction. So just that notion of God, I'd love people to just sort of expand that a little. And obviously we've moved away from primitive Jehovah figures that punish us for wrongdoing. At least most of us have. But we needn't rest on our laurels because we've moved away from Old Testament definitions of jealous gods. There's a lot more on the journey to understand that the creativity of energy is something that is ongoing and never ending, and that we are major parts of that ongoing development of cycles of energy. We are not set apart from divinity. It includes us. Whether we choose to exercise those powers is another step in the unfolding of our understanding of free will. And with that, I will bring this little chat to a close. And I wish you all well on your journeys. And have fun, by all means.